What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Phaithful Phanatics show live here on DSM Media's YouTube and Twitter channels. Guys, first and foremost, if you are new to the channel, make sure to check us out on Twitter at DSM_media. Hit that follow button. We greatly appreciate it. And while you're over on the channel, make sure to check out the link tree in our bio. It will take you to every social media platform we are available on. If you guys want to be interactive on today's show or any of our shows here at DSM, make sure to check out the YouTube link specifically. It is the best spot to get your thoughts, comments, questions, and concerns pulled up here on the screen with your host. I am one half of them on this Friday morning, Dylan Davis. You can find me on Twitter at DylanJD98. To my left, my faithful co-host, Scotty. You can find him on Twitter as well at Scotty Drown. Packed show on this Friday morning, my man. Phillies, 5-game winning streak. Eagles, OTAs. We got a fun little side combo there for the upcoming 2023 season. And then adding on to our 76ers off-season wish list. But I've been out for the last two shows, man. How have you been doing?
Hey, man, I've been having to do some makeshift work without you, but hey, we've been getting it in. But no, I'm definitely happy to have you back and get back to our normally scheduled programming. So yeah, we got a lot to get into today. I hope you enjoyed your time at the shore, because I know. I'm actually heading up that way tomorrow with my mom and my fiance. So I'll get a little bit of a taste of it, but I'm not staying up there as long as you did. But I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Wildwood days,
plenty to get into since you've been gone.
Yeah, man, it's unbelievable, right? I come home and I'm out of I'm out of my workspace. I'm up here stuffed in a bedroom for the first show back on this Friday, but like you said, a lot to get into. And we haven't done this in a while, man. We have not opened a show talking Phillies.
Yeah,
but we're going to do just so today, because the Phillies are on now a 5-game win streak after sweeping off those Detroit Tigers last night in walk-off fashion. Zach Wheeler has a no-hitter going into the 8th inning. Cody Clemens walks it off in front of his father at the ballpark. And the Phils win 5 in a row, man. And it's funny. Literally, the last time you and I spoke, last Friday, 7 whole days ago, we said, for the time being, I'm done. I'm in wait-and-see mode with this team. You got to give me a larger sample size than one series, than one walk-off win, blah, blah, blah. It took 5 games. I'm back. And this team is starting to figure it out. Maybe it's June, maybe it's the weather, whatever the hell it is. The starters are getting deep. We're going to get into that last 4 games. They've gotten into the 7th inning or beyond. Taijuan Walker, Ranger Suarez, Aaron Nola, and Zach Wheeler, which is humongous to see. 3 of the 5 games, the bats were on fire. They've won a game 1-0. They've won a game coming from behind after blowing a great Zach Wheeler start last night. So they're figuring out different ways to win, and that's the one thing. That's the one reason the wheels are starting to spin here for me. No pun intended. Because they're doing it in different ways, right? They're not just unleashing the bats and, it's a little bit of a hot streak for this lineup. They're not just getting dominant pitching, but the bats are silent. They're getting complimentary baseball throughout the lineup, from starters to the bullpen. Rob Thompson tinkering with this lineup, man. Trey Turner batting cleanup since I've been gone, right? Kyle Schwarber back in the leadoff spot. Castellanos batting second. They're starting to put it together here in the summer days, Scotty. What have you been seeing over the last 5-game stretch?
Yeah, no, I think you hit everything on the head there. I think you hit the nail on the head, so to speak. They've done what they're supposed to, and I think that's something that they haven't done all season so far, which is take care of business and beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. And, with them on this 5-game win streak, they've also moved ahead of the New York Mets in the NL East, just by half a game, but it counts all nonetheless. So like you said, you've been getting excellent pitching from Taijuan Walker the other night to Zach Wheeler last night. Obviously, he had a night. Even Nola, I believe, his last game he came out, he was
7 and a third, or 7 clean from Nola.
7 clean innings, right? And then he gives up the 1 hit right before he goes out. So all the pitching has been much, much better. Obviously, Ranger Suarez is still trying to get back into his groove. But then you mentioned it. It's not only the bats awakening in the last couple games, but last night, for instance, you see some big hits in big spots, right? Where
Yeah.
they're down 2-1 in the ninth inning. Bryce Harper starts it off with a double down the middle, right? And then I can't even remember how he got on the base after this, but I
Trey walked. Trey walked.
Brandon Marsh ended up popping one out. That gets
Yep. Sack
Bryce
fly.
home, I
Yeah.
believe. And then Clemens ultimately ends up winning them the
Yeah.
game. Nonetheless, that part of the lineup came up big in that big moment and allowed you to sweep a Detroit Tigers team where if you lose that game where Zach Wheeler is playing so well, it could change the perception of
Absolutely.
this last 5 games, right? It could change the perception if you don't sweep them
Yeah.
versus beating them 2-1 in the series. And I think that was huge to come away with the win, especially at Citizens Bank Park last night. Obviously, it was rocking in there after that. And now they get the big tests, right? They
Yep.
go from a
Dodgers.
small test, a team to get back on track against between the Nats and the Tigers, and then they get the big test with the Dodgers, and then so on to the Diamondbacks after that. So what I would say with the Phillies, and I'm interested where you are with this, because I guess I'm still in wait and see to
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
extent. Like we're back. We're talking
Yeah,
about them first on
I'm
the show
joking
today.
in the sense that we're
Yeah.
we're back. Like this
We're
team.
picking up steam, though.
Yeah.
We're picking up steam. We're playing some good baseball, and they're playing together as a unit. Let's see if that goes into this Dodgers series. You're probably not going to sweep the Dodgers,
No.
right? But maybe you can get 2 wins against the Dodgers. Maybe at least get 1, right? Like that would even be a good sign if you could get 1 there. So I want to see what they can do against these next 2 in these next 2 series coming up against the Dodgers and Diamondbacks. Obviously 2 of the top teams in the MLB right now. But nonetheless, you can't take anything away from what they're doing. They're doing what they're supposed to. Yesterday was a game that definitely could have got away from them, especially you talk about the gap in between the series as well from like the air pollution from the wildfires. So that messes up rhythm. They're still able to get that W last night. So
the last 3 years, man, the world we've been like it's unbelievable. We got smoked. We didn't get rained out. We got smoked out. So it's been pretty crazy, man. But
make that make sense.
This is always the goal. Obviously, when you head into a series, is just concentrate on winning that series, one game at a time, one series at a time. So I agree with Philly Eagles fan here, but I'm going to get to his comment above in a second. But to your point, like I would say this. Shout out to Mark Henry Jr. He said it best on Twitter the other day. Before the Tiger series, I know it's early June, and I hate to say they need to sweep the Tigers, but I need them to sweep the Tigers. Yeah. And the cool part about what's happening right now is they actually did what was needed in front of them, right? Because the Phillies of May would not like the Phillies of May lost a heartbreaker to the Washington Nationals to start that series. That's what you were waiting for. And kind of like how you wrapped up by saying, if you lose that game last night, how it changes the perception of this team and the tone surrounding this team right now is huge, because not only do you lose a game that was right in front of you, and instead of sweeping the Tigers and winning 5 straight, your losing streak's now over, heading into a tougher series. What if you lose the next 2? Now you're back on another 3-game losing streak. But the fact that you would have also lost a Zach Wheeler no-hit bid into the 8th inning would have been soul crushing for this team, all because the lineup could not produce anything. But that's where the leaders like Bryce and Trey, even though they came up clutch last night, man. So the fact that they were able to do that, and it's this, right? It's a combination of everything. It's just 5 games is 5 games. It's 2 against Nationals. It's 3 against the Detroit Tigers. I get it. But going from 25-32 to 30-32 in a 6-day span is humongous. Yeah. It's huge, man. So, but this has to be the key for me. This has to be why. And here's why. The bullpen got so much stress and strain put on it early on in the season by not only starters not getting deep, but just by injuries, right? Like you had a Bailey Falter and Matt Strahm game 2 out of every 5 days. That's essentially 2 bullpen games. Bilotti already threw his arm out. Brogdon, you're where he throws his arm out, right? Alvarado got placed on the IL. He's coming back shortly. But so you had injuries to Ranger. Obviously, Painter never got the season started. So you're already straining your bullpen in that sense. And then you have Taijuan Walker knock it out of the first inning in one game.
Yeah.
You have Aaron Nola imploding in the third or the fourth. You can't have that.
Can't happen.
So Rob's in a sticky situation where now Vasquez and McKinley Moore have to get work in close ball games early on in the year. He's got to throw Bilotti almost every day. Guys like Soto, who can be dominant in one start but awful in another, have to pitch more frequently in high leverage situations. So you're going to see more negative out of a guy like him and Kimbrel when they're pitching day after day after day almost. So the fact that these starters are getting not just into the seventh, through the seventh, setting up your setup and then your closer, it's worked wonders for them over the last 5 games. Because Sir Anthony and Kimbrel, yes, I know they each gave up a run last night, ultimately putting them down 2-1. They have both been spectacular since Jose Alvarado went down.
Yeah.
So having that setup of, okay, here's your starter through 7. Sir Anthony, here's the ball in the 8th. Kimbrel, here's the ball in the 9th. Soto, here's the ball in the 8th. Kimbrel, here's the ball in the 9th. Yeah. And, you know, they've been really good, man. And you have to give props where it's due. And as much, you know, we get on Aaron Nola on the show. He had a phenomenal start. Let's continue to see that. That's what we're looking for, right? Yeah. Consistency, Scotty.
Yeah. And that's the key there, because now you've done this against the Detroit Tigers, the Washington Nationals, and to your point about Kimbrel, you know, he gives up the run last night, but he strikes out the side the other night when it's 1-0. So you know he's still playing well, nonetheless, like you said. They have to do it against the better teams now and the better lineups that are coming up against them, and that's where the consistency comes in, right? Absolutely. You're able to get your feet on the ground against the Tigers for a guy like Taijuan Walker. He's able to finally get into 7 innings. He's able to get his feet on the ground, have one of his best starts as a Philly. And now you have to do it against the better competition.
Exactly.
And this is going to be a huge month for the Phillies, man. I didn't really take a great look at the landscape of the month before we came into the show today. But as I'm looking through it, you got huge opportunities. And I think this next, 7 games against the Diamondbacks and Dodgers, you kind of just got to come out of that even. Come out of that 500, and then you have room to really make some ground down at the bottom of this month, because you got the Braves and you got the Mets at the end of this month. But in between there, you do have the Athletics. That's obviously an opportunity they have to take advantage of and sweep them. But not to get too ahead of myself, I want to keep seeing
it's what a win streak does, man.
We got to look at this in segments, and how can the Phillies, stay where they're at right now against the Dodgers, and then maybe gain some ground against the Diamondbacks, and then really gain some ground against the Athletics, and then you get into the Braves, and now you're talking about the division.
Here's the thing. So, you said it's 7, so it's 3 against the Dodgers, and then 4 in Arizona, I'm assuming?
Yeah, 4 against the Diamondbacks.
And it's in Arizona?
In Arizona, correct.
They're playing very well. They're a lot better than I initially gave them credit for to start the season. But if you can come out at 4-3, somehow, some way, come out at 4-3, you're now 1 game under 500 after this tough stretch, right? But so there's 2 things here. Your point about now you need to do it against the better teams. It's so true, because while I disagree with the negative Phillies fans right now and the detractors of, it's only the Nationals and Tigers. Well, you only play who's in front of you. So just be happy that they're actually beating these teams that they're supposed to be beating. However, if you come out and you get swept by the Dodgers at home, or you lose 2 of 3 against Dodgers, and then, lose 3 of 4 against the Diamondbacks, no one gives a damn about your 5-game winning streak against the Nationals and the Tigers. This is where
right back to square one
has to come back to play, where people can start to take you more seriously, even though it's June. Like a June series against the Diamondbacks shouldn't define what this Phillies team is over the course of 162 games. But you've dug yourself into this hole where fans need to start to see this more often. Let me ask you a question, because maybe it's just me, but baseball more so than any sport because you are on and yeah, no, I agree that I agree that the Phillies can play with the big boys, but you need to see it consistently.
Yeah.
You split
Yeah.
against the Braves, and then you got swept against the Mets, who just got swept against the Braves. Like I know it all
Yeah.
kind of goes full circle, but you need to start to see it consistently. But I do agree with you. Baseball more so than any sport is a momentum sport, and we
Yeah.
talk about that especially come postseason time. But it's because they play every day, right? Football,
Yeah.
teams on a 4-week winning streak, but it's once a week. Basketball, every other day, two days off, blah blah blah. There is nothing. Do you feel it? Let me ask you that. When the Phillies are 20 minutes away from opening pitch, right now? Do you feel like they're heading into a game and they're going to win on this winning streak?
Against the Tigers, absolutely. I got to the point where
over the last 5, like they
over
start
the
to
last
stack.
5, yeah. There was a point in the Nationals series where, you always want to talk yourself back into it for one.
Right.
Like I wanted to say, a resilient win against the Nats. You go out there, handle business against the Nats. I'm back in, and it's hard to like fully buy in at that point.
Oh no,
but
I
then they
agree
go
with
through
you.
the Tigers, and they're doing what they're supposed to. You're seeing what you're seeing from the starting pitching. Yeah, I'm confident in them. It's the Dodgers at the end of the day. That's like a top-notch test.
Yeah.
But am I confident going into a game where you have Ranger Suarez tomorrow against Grover?
Tonight.
I think it is from
tonight.
Oh, it's tonight.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. So that is so Grove against Suarez tonight. You're right. So you have that matchup. That's a winnable matchup, right? Like you talk about Ranger Suarez. I know he's getting back in his groove, but that is a very winnable matchup. I think Grove is up over 8 earned ERA. Like that's insane. You got to take advantage of that.
Game for the Dodgers if the Phillies can do what they're supposed to do early on against them tonight. But
Yeah.
my point is like the competition does matter, obviously in terms of confidence level. But I just mean there's something like in the air when they're on a bad losing streak or a high winning streak, because when they were going through the motions and they're getting swept off by the Mets and then they hadn't, it's like, dude, every game I don't have any feeling they're going to win this game, but now it's like there's something to look forward to.
Let me ask you something. What do you think of Clemens, man?
So I was trying to go find my tweet last night. It's ironic you bring this up because I had tweeted 2 months ago, like beginning of the season when Pache, like before Pache even started to do anything, Harrison was a mess. McKinley Moore was pitching, Vasquez and Clemens. And I made a list of like, there's too many non-MLB players on this team that wants to contend for a championship. I was wrong about at least one of those guys right now. And that is, and I wanted to say, that is Cody Clemens.
Yeah.
I guess when you come from that pedigree, when you are the son of an all-time great pitcher, albeit it's just in your DNA. And while he's not a star by any sense, he's not he's not an everyday player. I don't want him as my everyday first baseman the way he has to be used right now. But I will say that he's at least serviceable. And I did not view Cody Clemens as a serviceable, viable option at first base for the time being. I just didn't a couple weeks ago. The kid can hit a little bit, man. He's got more pop than I ever thought.
Yeah.
Right. He's hit a couple out already. I'm pretty sure he has a 2 home run game this year.
He definitely had the 2 home run game. I can't remember who that was against. It was recently, though.
I could be totally off here. It could be somebody else, but he has that clutch hit last night. He can hit a little bit, man. He's not terrible at first. Like, he is more serviceable than I ever thought. That's the compliment I will give Cody Clemens.
That's fair, and I think that's fair because you don't want to get irrational with it.
No, you don't. No,
come up big and
sit here and say that Cody Clemens is like the best option to back up Rhys Hoskins at first base.
I guess the reason I popped that question to you is like with Trey Turner, for instance, we went through a stretch where he was just coming up really small in the big moments. Now you're getting Clemens, who's coming up really, really big in some of these bigger moments. But what I would ask you next is we're into June. Guys are playing better. who do you think needs to continue their play in the lineup? Is there any like pitching, any part of the pitching staff that you
Yeah.
need to see
Um,
really uptick a little bit just to keep this going in the month of June and have a big month where maybe we do get back in the NL East race? If you're like, that's what we can talk about now. Like as they're approaching the 500 mark, you have series against the Braves and the Mets coming up. This is your opportunity. If you play some really good baseball in the month of June, you can be right back, not only in the playoff race, but in the race for the NL East. Like that's a
listen,
realistic thing.
listen,
I
they're
don't want
all
to get ahead of
very good
myself,
playoff
but it's a
race.
realistic thing.
They're two and a
Wide
half
open.
games out of a wild card, and for all you just overly negative Phillies fans, and I get it, they haven't given you much to be optimistic about at all most of this season. Okay, the bottom line is they are 2.5 games out of a wild card, and the three teams ahead of them for the second wild card, the third wild card, and the spot above them are the Giants, the Pirates, and the Marlins. So if you're looking at this Phillies team, well, they haven't given me anything this year. What if any of those three
Yeah.
teams given you over the last decade? Or the Giants have won a little bit in the last decade and a half, but like any of those teams giving you anything to believe in that they're going to continue this throughout the summer and the Phillies can't climb above them. So relax there. The division, do I think they get there? No, I think the Braves are I think they're too good. I think
They're
they have
good,
too much
yeah.
firepower. Dude,
Yeah.
Strider gave up like 8 or 9 runs last night and they beat the Mets by 3. Like they're really good. But the bottom line is we can have that conversation if they continue to play this type of ball, because they're going to be 6, 7 games out the rest of the way. They're going to get the Braves a handful more times to have those knocks and opportunities to catch up on them and make up ground on the Atlanta Braves.
Put some pressure on them.
Yeah. When you talk about players stepping up the rotation, man, I have to go to the middle of this lineup right now. And it's weird because consistency continuing forward, like Nick Castellanos has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you're just going to assume that Bryce is going to be Bryce.
Can I ask you something about Castellanos? Is this what we were supposed to get, right? Like he's not playing out of his mind right now, right? Like is this sustainable, I guess is what I'm asking. Like,
listen,
is this what we were expecting?
Maybe is the 315, 317 average a little high for what we were expecting? Yeah, I mean, I didn't really expect him to come in and be a 300 plus hitter. I kind of expected like 285 maybe from Costi, something around there. But the little bit more pop, dude, that year in Cincinnati when he hit 34 home runs, 35 home runs, that was an outlier. But he does have pop. You're seeing some of that this year. But the doubles, Scotty, and the balls down the line and the clutch hitting, and you see that swagger, right? You see the top 2 button, that chain. When he's hitting, he's the man, bro. He's
like you said, momentum.
Yeah. So no, this is definitely more so on the right side of the line of what we expected out of Castellanos when we signed him than the wrong side. I would just say the average is a bit of a surprise for me. Like, dude, he's hitting like 317 right now, 316.
Second in the lineup right now. Number 2.
He deserves it, though. He has been phenomenal. But, so you definitely need him to be consistent. Bryce has to be Bryce moving forward. You need guys like Martian Stott to just stay in the middle of this lineup and just come up with clutch at-bats at times. You got to get Bohm healthy. But the guy I got to go to is hitting cleanup right now, man. And he's playing better with the rest of the team. But Trey's still inconsistent. Like, he's hit a couple of home runs, but then he'll have an 0 for 4 with a couple bad plate appearances, right? He walked last night in a clutch moment, but that's not, we're not sitting here bragging about Trey Turner's walk last night. It wasn't Bryce Harper's double down the line. Ultimately, Turner did come around to score the game-winning run, though. He's the guy because he can do so much for you.
Can do so much more.
Yes. Like, dude, he hasn't been good in the field either.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a plus. He's an above. I'm getting.
Yeah, I know what you're. Yeah, I know.
I'm not trying to say above average. He is like a plus defender, is what I'm trying to say. Plus, so he's been bad in that regard. And then you just talk about it, man. I don't need power numbers out of Trey.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
contact.
The on-base percentage, average has to get up. The way he can steal bases for you in big moments. Think about it in a one-run game, right, in the 7th inning. If Trey Turner leads off, if he walks or singles, that threat to get him to second, with a Bryson Stott behind him,
Yeah.
He needs to step it up.
Great
And yeah,
discipline.
the money obviously plays a factor
Yeah.
when he's brought in as a $300 million man. You're expecting a lot more out of him than what you've been getting so far. I will
Exactly.
say more positives out of Trey Turner over the last 5 games or so. But you're still getting inconsistency. And I think to me, basically to wrap up your question, I think was which guy can elevate this team
Yeah, exactly.
over 500 into that second wild card, maybe fight for it
Yeah.
is Trey Turner because he was brought here and paid to do that kind of thing with Bryce Harper.
Yeah.
Um, and he can just do so much for this team that a guy like Kyle Schwarber, if you're expecting June Schwarber, you're really just expecting what? Home runs.
Right. Home run.
He's hitting 170 still. Like you're not Kyle Schwarber's not gonna end the season hitting 250 for the Phillies. Like that's not happening. So yeah, Trey Turner to me, agreed with Hunter, has to be the
Yeah.
guy that needs to start to play consistently and do some damage in the middle of this Phillies lineup. It'll be interesting if he does start to heat up what Rob does with the lineup again, right? Like if you continue to win, you don't mess with that. So like you
See,
keep it at 4.
and I think this is it, as we look long term, even past June. Just get this team to the playoffs because
Yeah.
you do have players like Trey Turner that, like you said, can elevate this team to a next level. All it takes is, like you said earlier, baseball's about momentum. Pick up some momentum at the right time, and this team can
My
get really
friend
rolling.
Bo.
We know that this team is as talented as any team. When you talk about lineups, you can talk about starting pitching and the inconsistencies, but when you talk about batting lineups, this is one of the stronger lineups in the entire MLB.
No,
So
but you can
it's just a
even
matter of
extend
time before it clicks, man. Like you would think, at least.
Yeah, but you can even extend that conversation to the rotation, Scotty. Like, Ranger and Walker and Nola excuse me, pitching to their full capabilities right now?
Yeah,
No.
that's a
But
good question.
when you talk about on paper the 4 of them, you would take this 4 in totality more than a lot of teams 4.
Yeah, we saw Ranger Suarez in big moments last season, last postseason as
Humongous.
well. So yeah, I'm
He
with
went
you.
out and was a closer in the to wrap up the NLCS.
Yeah, these guys got some big stones on this team, man. They just gotta keep building. That's all they're doing right now. They're building blocks.
Exactly.
And
And that's
just
where
keep
we'll
building
leave
that
this
momentum.
conversation with the Titans. It felt good to kind of get some positivity out there
Yeah.
in regards to them because you know what it was? We were so high on them to start the season, coming
Yeah.
off that World Series appearance. Trey Turner signs here, all these guys sign here. They start off sluggish, and we're wrapping shows up with them for 7 minutes, and we're negative. It feels good for almost 30 minutes here.
We were like avoiding them. We were avoiding the Phils and
Yeah, exactly. We were avoiding them. They were the middle child, right?
do you think there's anything to and don't mind me. I don't know if Reese was out there last night, but I know he made an appearance a couple nights ago.
He was in the dugout, man.
Yeah, do you think that makes any type of difference when it comes to like
It's
leadership?
funny, you could. There's a fine line here
Hard to
between if you want to
quantify
call
that.
it a superstition or if you want to call it like his leadership because he had not been around
Right.
the ball club and been in the clubhouse and on the bench with the guys for the games. And I don't know. They're 3-0 with him on the bench. I'll say
See how
that.
it goes, right? Going forward.
If his luck continues, maybe it'll start to pick up some steam. And he is one of the bigger leaders in this clubhouse for sure.
Yeah.
But we'll definitely see tonight against the Dodgers, man. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I'm excited for the game. Yeah, Friday night baseball, man.
And I did too much down the shore. My ass is I'm staying in, and I will be tuned into the Phils on this beautiful Friday night. Hunter, yeah, he is the guy, man. We need him back for this postseason run, hopefully. But Scotty, let's switch gears on over to Philadelphia Eagles, man. Let's talk some Phanatics for a little bit. Your hat says it all right there, man. We're eagled up.
It's the
Obviously,
Super Bowl hat. I mean, I don't know.
Oh,
if it's good vibes,
hey,
but
they were there. They were there. They were there more so than 30 other teams can say.
yeah.
Listen, we won't hear from or see the guys again really on the field until July, right? Until they report back for camp. But OTAs did wrap up yesterday. Obviously had to be inside the last couple of days because of that air quality that we were talking about to start the show. But I just want to get your quick thoughts. Obviously, as OTAs wrap up, we've heard from Nick Sirianni. He talked a lot about Jalen Hurts. Pictures circling from Hurts and AJ Brown taking BP, and that the zoom in of Hurts's forearm and the shape that he looks to be in. And then the rookies, man, the 2 first rounders turning heads and shining in OTAs in Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter. Just what are some of your main takeaways as you saw videos, tweets, reports, interviews, anything coming out of OTAs for the Birds?
Yeah, man. So first things first. Jalen Hurts. I mean, I don't know what he was doing this offseason, dude. Like, he looks stacked. Like, that picture with him and Bryce. I know people have said it online, and I'll mimic it
Bryce
here.
is a big dude.
Bryce is a big, ripped guy, and Jalen Hurts makes him look like a little man. I don't know if you saw Jalen Hurts. He's turning into the face of the NFL, and it's kind of crazy. I think, like, I said this to my fiance and my mom, because my mom was up here last weekend too, and I told them, he just did this commercial thing with Jordan and Tiana Taylor, and she has like this new shoe dropping, and he's in the commercial with her and stuff. So he's like in a Jordan brand commercial now. Bro, he's gonna be more popular. I'm not saying he's going to be better than Patrick Mahomes. He is going to be more popular than Patrick Mahomes by the end of this season when it comes to being the face of the NFL, because he's just a much more smoother guy, right? Like, he's built for that spotlight. Just wanted to throw that out there. That is my prediction for this upcoming season outside of football. But man, this dude is stacked. Aside from that, obviously Nolan Smith has looked like an animal. He's just so quick off the edge. It's fucking ridiculous, man. Like,
you know the video. I know the video you're talking about.
It's ridiculous how he gets around the bags, bro. Like, and you talk about who he's playing behind. Like, he couldn't have better mentors to learn from between BG, who is an undersized edge, Hassan Reddick, an undersized edge.
Not just that, but
then you have Josh Sweat too.
But to have that speed and motor that he looks like he has, right?
Literally,
on those days, I get it, right? But if he has that speed and that motor, to be in the middle of a rotation is crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely agree.
He's not an every down. He's not an every day, or not an every day. He's not an every play guy.
Yeah. And that's the benefit you have when you have Hassan Reddick, right? Like, one of the best top 5 pass rusher in the NFL to learn from. You can switch those guys off, and literally, I'm too excited for Nolan Smith. Jalen Carter, obviously, there's been a lot of talk about him. I know the one thing that went kind of viral was him breaking the bag. I know that was semi-made up by, I think it was Zangaro or Zadar. I can't remember which one it was, but they made that up. But nonetheless, he's looked like a beast, and I'm excited for him. One interesting comment from Sirianni that I caught on to, I think I saw it yesterday, but people asked him, what has impressed him the most from OTAs so far? And he actually kind of went against the grain, and he talked about Quez Watkins and talked about how he's come in as a guy and he's acting and training as hard as a guy that feels like he doesn't belong in a sense, right? He's trying to earn his spot back because we know what he's coming off of. And mind you, he didn't get a bunch of targets last year, and you're not going to in an offense with Goddard, AJ, and Smitty. That's not going to happen. But in the moments that he did get those targets, he didn't take advantage of them. And you need somebody in that wide receiver 3 spot that's going to take advantage. And you brought in guys like Zacchaeus from the Atlanta Falcons, right, who can compete for that wide receiver 3 spot. So he's going to have to step up this year. And I think it's good that Sirianni singled him out, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me with Quez, and Hurts has actually come out, I think, and said a couple words about him as well. As he worked with him at OTAs. The Quez point is interesting because, like, I'm happy and excited to hear that, he's put his head down and gotten back to work early this offseason, and he's motivated, and that's great. But, like, let's not take this as it's unwarranted. Like, my man dropped a walk-in touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He fumbled away their only loss through a long stretch of a season. Like the criticism was warranted to Quez Watkins as wide receiver 3 last season. I'm glad to hear that he's motivated. He's put in the work. Keep your head down. Continue to do what you're doing, and get Philly back on your side. But we'll see.
This one right here. Yeah, that's exactly what Dylan said.
That's what I'm. My point.
Yeah.
What I was trying to say was, don't take on. You remember how you and Gint used to discuss like the annoying younger guys on the Eagles team?
The chip on your shoulder.
Like everyone, the world's against me. The city hates me. You stunk. The bottom line is you stunk. We're talking about Jalen Reagor, okay? Don't take on that kind of personality this offseason of, I'm doing this because Philly hates. No. Philly doesn't hate you. Philly wants you to succeed. We wanted you to catch that ball in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, we really wanted you to do it.
That's what we want you to do this year. We don't want to have to improve wide receiver 3. We want you to go be the guy and make that play in a big-time moment this year. Go do that.
And you look at Quez, he's a guy, just what we're talking about. He's a guy that is not only playing for a spot on the Eagles, he's playing for a spot in the NFL. Like, you go out there and that's what you put on the field. That's what you put on the tape.
Yeah.
That's what everybody else is watching. But some other things that I did like from OTAs, I listened to a press conference with Kenneth Gainwell. I've been wondering what's going on in his head with all of the change of the guard in the running back room, because Miles Sanders heads out. It's like, I'm the guy now, right? Then you bring in Rashad Penny. It's like, some competition. Then you bring in DeAndre Swift. It's like, where am I at in the rotation now? And it was interesting to hear him. Obviously, I've had a chance to meet him. He's a very humble guy. He's a very hardworking mentality type of guy. What he said in the press conference, basically about him and DeAndre Swift specifically, they're staying after practice to get the extra work in. DeAndre Swift is passing on his experiences to Gainwell and telling him what he struggled with in Detroit, what he had to figure out in Detroit as a young running back. And I think just this communication, once again, that running back room was very tight last year. And it seems like they're building that again. Now, I haven't seen Rashad Penny. I haven't heard from him at all. I'm not even sure if he was at OTAs.
No, he was. No,
was he? I didn't hear anything about him, but nonetheless, I'm sure that he's going to fit right into that room. These guys are going to have each other's backs. And then you throw in Boston Scott, who's obviously a good character guy. He's a guy that always shows up when he's given the opportunities. So these are all guys in this running back room that have come from situations where they have to take advantage of their opportunities. You look at Rashad Penny in Seattle, had to take advantage when he's on the field between all the guys that Seattle's brought in to compete against him. Same thing in Detroit. I bitched all season last year about DeAndre Swift in Detroit and the amount of carries Jamal Williams was getting in the red zone. He's not getting those opportunities. And then same thing with Gainwell last year and Boston Scott with Miles Sanders in the running back room.
Gainwell want to get the ball inside the 20s. He'd come in at the 12 and get the ball somehow.
See, Gainwell's probably on the opposite end of that scale, but nonetheless.
I don't know, man.
I'm excited for those guys, man.
I would ask you this before. You know what? We might go on a little bit longer with the Eagles than we initially thought because we got a couple more things to get into. I know Abe had a question up in the comments for us that we'll get to in a second. Who do you think? Like, I know there's not a starter, right? Like, hell, Miles Sanders wasn't the first running back on the field at times last season, right? But like, who do you think is the number one in the room, just stylistically, I guess you could say? Because you talk like Scott is going to be that number 3/4 option. He's not going to be that guy, right?
Right.
Swift and Gainwell are kind of similar. Penny's the outlier. Penny is a little bit more of a pure running back, pure runner for me, a little bit bigger build. Do you think Rashad Penny has a bigger role as RB1 and Swift still comes in and gets a ton of work? Yeah. Penny's not going to get more than if he's the number one, he's not going to get more than 12 carries, 13 carries a game probably. But is he the number one? Swift gets 8 carries plus 3 catches, something like that. Do you think Rashad Penny has a chance to be the number one?
I think, Yeah, to answer your question straight up, yeah, I do think Rashad Penny has a chance to be the number one. I would ultimately say you know where I stand with DeAndre Swift.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
no.
he's the most talented running back of the four. I think he by far is the guy with the most potential. But what I could see the Eagles doing just with DeAndre Swift's history, obviously the injury concerns that come along with
Stay with
him,
Penny, though.
and Rashad Penny, right?
Yeah,
They're gonna use the rotation. They're gonna use the community type
yeah.
of approach with the running back room.
Which is
And
fun.
to your point, I think it's exactly what you said. 12 to 13 carries for Rashad Penny. If Rashad Penny is killing it, give him more carries.
Yeah.
If DeAndre Swift comes in, he's getting 6 yards per carry, give him more carries. If he's doing his thing out of the backfield as a receiving back, give him more. It's going to be very much who's into the game today, who's got the momentum, who's playing strong for us today and giving us what we need. And I think from
Go
there,
back. Like,
you can just roll with
exactly. You can't
whoever's
tell me it
hot.
doesn't work. Go back to the Super Bowl year. Go back to Carson Wentz's MVP year.
Yeah.
They wanted to air the ball out because he was playing at that level,
Yeah.
but they also had a three-headed backfield of
Yeah.
Garrett Blunt, Jay Ajayi, who they traded for,
very
and Corey
similar.
Clement. They all got the ball.
It's very similar in that aspect, man, where DeAndre Swift in my mind fits the Corey Clement role mainly, but I think he can be more than that at the same time because he is better than
Like, I
Corey
think it
Clement.
would be like Rashad Penny would be like LeGarrette Blunt. He'd be the
Yeah.
first guy on the field. A little bit. He's not obviously as big as LeGarrette Blunt, but bigger,
Put
pure
Gainwell
runner,
in
right?
the Clement role.
Gainwell in the Corey Clement
Swift is
role,
Ajayi.
and Swift in the Ajayi role, which obviously they're different. They're not built the same. Swift's a little bit more of a pass catching threat, but it'll be interesting. I definitely think they'll ride with the hot hand. I was just curious
And
because
Boston Scott, he's gonna get his time right against the Giants. Like at
that's
the very
where I
least.
was curious because I feel like Swift gets all the hype, and rightfully so, dude. Me and you were texting back and forth when Howie made the trade. I was still like, I am stoked to see DeAndre Swift, Agent Zero, in this backfield.
Bro,
right?
he's so big for a running back in the way he moves. It's ridiculous.
But I feel like the Penny move when we signed him, Eagles fans were like, Kenny G's still number one. He's always hurt. If Rashad Penny is healthy, dude, what was the number in his last 10 games? He ran for like 1,100 yards.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous number.
He's a very, very talented young back.
Yeah.
If he can stay healthy, he will have a role on this team. So that's what I was kind of interested in. One last point I want to get to. Well, all right, hold on. Hey, we're gonna circle around your question because I'm looking at time. I'm looking at what we got to get to still.
Hey, we're good. No rush, man. Just so you know, we're good. You're back today. It's Friday. Let's have a good show.
Let's do it. So
Dylan knows I work, so but we're good, man. We're good.
Some of my thoughts from OTAs were similar to you, right? You look at the 2 first rounders. Nolan Smith's speed and motor, coming off the edges. We saw Jalen Carter.
Personality too.
The fact that both of those dudes are turning heads at OTAs with all the talent that's in that room on that field together, that's pretty spectacular to hear. Nakobe Dean, another Georgia Bulldog, signal caller, the way he's starting linebacker, kind of looking like
leader
right?
of the defense.
Very excited and interested to see that investment maybe pay off this year because the way you didn't see him used last year, he was the steal of the draft in the 3rd round, was a special teams guy for us last year, right? So interested to see how he looks. And then, man, not just the shape that Jalen's in, but Sirianni's comments about him. And Abe made a great point earlier. Like, it's media, and there's a lot of blowing smoke and there's a lot of posturing. But this Eagles team, with the things they built over the last year and a half, they have 99.9% of my trust and faith. So when Nick Sirianni speaks about a player, I listen and I believe in it. So when he says Jalen Hurts has to be the most coachable dude he's ever been around, that's awesome. Like, dude, that is so cool and so awesome.
Talking about a guy that just got one of the fattest contracts in NFL history.
Yeah, man. And to hear his accuracy has taken another step and his decision making and development has taken another step. It's like, and it's early. It's OTAs, but we haven't gotten to camp yet. We haven't unfolded the playbook yet. Like, it's going to be a lot of fun to see that continue.
I saw some talk of Jalen Hurts where, amongst the Eagles personnel, right? The coaching staff, the GM room, they believe that Hurts can be a top 2 pocket passer in this league. And that's crazy to think about when you think about what Jalen Hurts was and what he was pigeonholed in as, coming out of college. And that was like a gadget guy, a gadget quarterback. They compared him to Taysom Hill. And now this guy
Run
is
the
out here
Wildcat for us.
leading the NFL. Yeah, it's honestly amazing. And you just know the way the coaches talk about him, the way he presents himself, he's just going to keep chugging. He's going to keep working and getting better. And this team, man, they built something great around him. I saw this crazy stat the other day that came out, and it was about Jalen Hurts and the check down rate and how he had one of the lowest check down rates in the NFL amongst starters last year.
He
and I
also
think
had one of the highest, completion percentages and numbers and totals as a pure pocket passer last year.
I think that's interesting because that's one area where I think Jalen Hurts could, I don't want to say get better. It's not that he needs to get better and check down more. I think it's one area where now you have DeAndre Swift who can catch the ball out of the backfield. You have Dallas Goedert that can hit those short routes and turn something into nothing. Those type of check down plays are going to be there, and that's going to preserve his body because I think at this point in his career, you've had the last 2 seasons, mind you, it's been 2 games. It was 2 games last year, and you didn't really need him in those games. When you needed him to go out and secure the 1 seed, he was there for you. So I'm not super concerned with his health. He's built like a tank. Like, you do have to take care of your body at the end of the day, right? We've seen Patrick Mahomes get beat up by using his legs a lot. We've seen Dak Prescott, fracture his ankle using his legs. So Lamar Jackson, right? So you got to take care of your body in that sense, and we got to take hits off of his body. And I think you can do that now as he's advancing as a passer.
Right, that's kind of Abe's point. He was the check down last year.
Yeah,
dude. I want to go back to DeAndre Swift because I know I just put a lot of attention to Rashad Penny, but I don't want to understate how excited I am to see DeAndre Swift play here. Don't tell me Sirianni's not going to use him in the slot.
Yeah,
he's going to use him in the slot.
Yeah,
and do you remember the Darren Sproles slip screen we used to run? Like the pure Madden slip screen type of play.
Yeah, to the house every time, man.
Don't tell me we can use that with DeAndre Swift back there, bro.
Yeah, you can do some crazy things with DeAndre Swift in the passing game.
Do you remember when Corral? Remember Westbrook and Buckholder? Remember when they would remember that? Remember those teams with McNabb? And they would put both of them in the gun with McNabb, one to one side. Don't tell me you can't get interesting and fun and, send the guy on the right across the front of Jalen. He looks his way, pump fake while Swift sweeps behind him and goes the other way. Drop dude, run a lot of different things, man.
An underrated facet of what DeAndre Swift brings is, we talked a lot about wide receiver 3 and the slot and bringing DeAndre Hopkins, but literally, if Quez is stinking it up, man, more opportunity for DeAndre Swift. I'm not saying he's a wide receiver, but you can run him out there in the slot, man.
Well, man.
Yeah. So I'm with all of it. It's exciting what we're hearing coming out of camp, man. And they're just getting started. To your point about Nakobe Dean, I've been skeptical of him just because of his size. Quite on, if I'm being fully transparent about Nakobe Dean, he has all the off the field characteristics of the leadership, knowing the plays, knowing where his teammates need to be. He has all of the IQ characteristics that you need for football. His size worries me in a sense, but I will say one thing that's making me way more comfortable is the fact that you do have all these Georgia Bulldogs on the defense with him. And so it gives him that confidence, right? Like in my mind, Jalen Carter's going to start this year. It's going to be Jalen Carter or Jordan Davis. One of those guys are going to start at defensive tackle where Hargrave started last year. And I think when you have those type of building blocks and you have those connections from college where they all talk highly and look up to Nakobe Dean. It's not the other way around, right? Even though these guys have more talent if you go by where they got drafted compared to him. He's the leader of that unit. He's the leader that was on that Georgia Bulldog defense when they won a national championship, and he's always talked about amongst these guys. That gives him a vote of confidence in that defense to take control of the room. And so that gives me a lot more
there's a comfortability there for sure. You just said a name, and I don't want to say I forgot about him, but this team and this defensive line is so deep.
Jordan Davis.
You almost forget about him.
our first-round pick last year.
Yeah, like, you almost forget that he's there, that he might start
It's
for this
crazy.
team because
He
of
can
how
improve.
deep they are. Yeah,
It's
man, it's
crazy. Milton Williams
unbelievable.
gets lost in the shuffle, man. He was solid.
Yeah,
And I know we don't even like the dude. Derek Barnett is going to be back this
he's an
year, and
afterthought right
he's a
now.
body. He's a body. Like, he can get to the quarterback at the end of the day, just minus out the dumb shit. But this team, this unit, man, we talked about
And we
Hassan.
have
I
a
mean,
new
Josh Sweat,
DC, bro. Sean decide like to see what he can do is going to be fun, man.
new
But
DC. Yeah,
listen,
it's interesting, man.
let's get to our segment that we brought because a lot of great
Yeah,
comments got us going in different directions about the Eagles today. So,
absolutely.
guys, we want to hear your thoughts as well. So, drop your comments. We want 2 new Eagles newcomers. So, whether that be picked up free agency, traded like Swift, drafted like Carter and Nolan Smith, whatever it is, give us the Eagle newcomer you're most excited for, and also give us the Eagle newcomer you think has the biggest impact on this team in 2023. They could be the same guy, but it could be maybe a running back you're most excited for, but you think a defensive player has a more powerful impact on this team. Scotty, I'll throw it to you first. Who are you most excited to see new and fresh in an Eagles uniform?
Yeah, I mean, you could probably guess.
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift is the guy I'm most excited for, man. We've talked about it so much on Turf Talk, just about his usage in Detroit, the system, whatever it is that's going on there. It's great for the running backs, right? Jamal Williams had a career year, but DeAndre Swift just wasn't fitting in there, despite his massive amount of talent that he has. I think he brings. We just talked about it. He brings a completely different element to this offense. Where you can split him out in a slot and put him on a short screen route, right? You can split him out of the backfield, start him in the backfield, then move him out to the slot, right? There's so many different formations and things they can run with DeAndre Swift as a receiving option. And that's something that I feel like we've been missing. Like, there was talk about Kenneth Gainwell coming out of college, that he was that type of back, but we just really haven't seen that yet, quite honestly. He hasn't impressed in the receiving game as much as I thought he would. So I'm looking at DeAndre Swift for that element alone. But then you look at the other side where he averaged, 5.5 yards per carry last year. And he wasn't getting the opportunities that I think he's going to get in Philadelphia. On top of that, you thought Miles Sanders, like, for the people out there that thought Miles Sanders was explosive, and we would see those occasional 50-plus yard runs for touchdowns, right? We've seen it so many times with Miles. DeAndre Swift is on another level. He can literally do that every time he touches the ball.
Is on another level from Miles Sanders as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You talk about the ability to break tackles in the open field. Rashad Penny is a monster in that respect. And DeAndre Swift, to the same notion, man. Once he gets into open field, it's gonna good luck stopping him. Good luck tackling him, because as I mentioned earlier, not only is he one of the quicker backs in the NFL and just cuts on a dime, he's one of the bigger guys. He is stacked. He's not a small running back, man, and he's going to be hard to bring down behind this offensive line built around Jason Kelce, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, man. It's honestly crazy to think about, and it's a blessing in disguise for DeAndre Swift. And the thing I'll end on for him here is this is a contract year. Like, he's making close to $1 million for this year, right? He's got to go out there and earn that contract. And same thing with Rashad Penny. Same thing with Kenneth Gainwell. This running back room has a ton of motivation behind them. But as I mentioned, I think DeAndre Swift has the most talent in that room. And I think the motivation behind him getting a contract, I'll take it even further and say it this way. I think DeAndre Swift is going to be so impressive in an Eagles uniform that he won't be in one next season. That's how good he's going to be, because he's going to earn a contract that is going to take him out of the Eagles' price range.
How he doesn't pay them, man. How he doesn't pay them. We'll see, though, man. The hometown kid still would be really young. Maybe he'd want to stay here for a little bit less somewhere else. But
I hope so.
You're gonna need to see a lot of what Abe just posted right there.
Yeah.
Because,
good luck,
man. I know we're all excited for the Sixers offseason, and we're excited for this Phillies run, right? I need Eagles football back weekly, dude.
Different, man.
Eagles pregame, I need all of it. But Got a couple comments. Abe obviously really excited for Nolan Smith, but he's going with Jalen Carter as both for his answer. Biggest impact and most excited for. And I think it's interesting, and I'm going to get to Carter in a second, but
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because the type of generational talent this kid was built up to be in this draft, Scotty. If it wasn't for that off the field issue, Jalen Carter would not be a Philadelphia Eagle. I think that's the bottom line. And so when you talk about that type of talent, yes, he's going to be a part of a rotation, but I think he needs to be a big part of it because while I love our rotation and it keeps guys fresh and no one's really bigger than the other, your stars need to be on the field more so than they're not. And I hate when we have a first rounder, but we want to build him up and we want him to learn. Meanwhile, there's another first rounder in Houston because they stink. He's getting the free reins and he's a defensive player of the year candidate or Mika in Dallas. I need to see Jalen Carter be on the field often. Hunter, love his comment. Not a newcomer, but someone that didn't start or play last year, Nakobe Dean. Jalen Hurts with a Hall of Dude. He's going to be awesome. But my most excited for Scotty, I'm very close to agreeing with you. How could you just the type of difference maker he can bring to this offense next to Jalen Hurts and the RPO as Abe alluded to and the pass catching ability as you alluded to. I'm super excited for his shiftiness. But I am going to agree with Abe, and I'm going to go Jalen Carter as my biggest, my most interested to see, my want to see in an Eagles uniform because of that type of generational type of pass rusher we're kind of talking about up the middle. Look at this. Look at this. Terrell Edmonds, baby.
Yeah.
He could start. He could start if they don't update that safety room, Scotty. But who do you think is the biggest difference maker? And I want to ask you a question because I have mine as a dark horse, but I also have one that it's I don't know too much about his role. Do you think Tyler Steen starts this year in place of Sayamalo?
It's tough.
Because I only say that because if he starts, I'm putting him as my biggest difference maker because you just plug him into that line with Stoutland he would have the most impact.
By default, I agree. Because at the end of the day, if you're plugging him in, he's the guy that you're going to be watching. You know what I mean? He's the guy that is going to be the weak link of the offensive line. So you're going to be watching him. And I would imagine that the guys around him would be able to lift him up immediately as a rookie. It'll be interesting. I think him and Cam Jurgens will compete for it. I think ideally, I think they would like to put Steen in that role just because you want to keep Jurgens focused on center, the backup center role. Jason Kelce most likely will not be here next season, right? This season after this upcoming.
Probably one more.
Probably not. He's doing way too well with his podcast and things off of the field that I think that's going to be way too tantalizing for him. He'll always be a Philadelphia legend. I think we'll always see him in and out of the city and stuff. But he's such a character off the field that it's why keep beating your body up, especially if they win the Super Bowl this year, we hope they will, right? No, but I think that's a good pick from Tyler Steen, and it's under the radar, I would say as well.
Because we don't know what his role is.
We don't know if he's going to start.
He might not play, so it's
because I would say the same thing about Cam Jurgens if they're going to start him at guard. I think they both would be successful just given the talent around them. For my most impactful player, I'm going to follow you in Abe's lead, and Jalen Carter is my guy because while Swift is the exciting, like you said, the explosive player, Carter is the guy that's going to be there 1 through 3 downs, right? He's going to be on the field a lot. If it's me, he would be on the field a lot. I'm not using him. Downs. I'm not using him like Jordan Davis last year, where Jordan Davis was pigeonholed into run defense, and I think that's fair because that's his strength. Jalen Carter is not that guy. He's a guy that can stop the run and he can rush the passer. So I think you can use him in a more variety of ways than even Javon Hargrave, who struggled against the run. He was not a good run defender. He could not plug the hole on those inside runs. So I think in that respect, Jalen Carter can be used on rundowns. He can be used on pass rush downs. Fletcher Cox is a little bit older now. I shouldn't even say a little bit. He's a lot older. He's a veteran in the room. So he's not going to play full games anymore. We know that. He's been getting rotated out. I think when you look at Jalen Carter, between those three defensive tackles right there, Fletcher, Jordan Davis, and Jalen Carter, I think he's got to be the guy that's on the field the most. And, you're switching him off sparingly between those guys. So you talked about a generational talent, arguably the best talent, maybe outside of quarterback in this draft, right? This guy is just special. His size is NFL ready, right? 6'3", 300 pounds. He's ready to play at the NFL level now. He's already came out in OTAs in better shape than what he was in the pre-draft, focus. So
I think he really wanted to be an Eagle.
He fooled everybody because look at him now. But yeah, he's going to be the most impactful, and it's not just because of his role. I think he's going to fulfill the role as well. Yeah. Become one of the premier defensive tackles in the NFL. I know there's some people that really think he's going to be a bust, and I think it's interesting because is that just character based? Is that what it comes from? Is it just because of his incident off the field?
Or it's anti-Philly thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's going to be all right.
Most impactful, if Steen starts, I'm going to go with Steen because it's Stoutland University. You plug them between Mailata and Kelsey or whatever you want to do with them, between Lane and Kelsey. Obviously, he's going to have his learning curve, and he's going to get beat up a little bit. He is going to be the weak link on that offensive line. Yeah. But as Abe said, it's a great pick, dude. So he comes in, and he's just from that. He's from one of those schools. He's just you're built to play in the NFL at that school, right? So he would be my guy. Carter, obviously, Defensive Player of the Year. I can't disagree at all because he should be on the field a lot. And my dark horse would be their other first-round pick. I think Nolan Smith will have a very nice rookie year coming off the edge.
Yeah.
What's a sack total you could put on Nolan Smith, number-wise, realistically?
It depends how they're going to rotate him in. Do you put Nolan Smith and Hassan Reddick on the field at the same time? Right. That would be the key, because if they're just using him sparingly as a Hassan Reddick replacement,
right,
then he's not going to get on the field too much. But I would say anywhere from 5 to 7 sacks. I think that would be a solid total for him.
We're all around the same number, 7.
Yeah.
I would say 5 to 7 is a pretty good number. But
that would be a solid season for Nolan Smith rookie year. Yeah.
You joking?
Yeah.
Your second first round pick in the midst of this rotation gets 6 sacks. That's huge.
Yeah, though. Yeah.
No,
and Brandon Graham, you would imagine his part of the rotation will be dwindled down a little bit, right? He's getting older, so yeah.
Josh Sweat's dealt with some injuries.
Who knows there? Yeah, exactly. And do you run Nolan Smith at some outside linebacker opportunities? I mean, is that something
I think you absolutely can.
Yeah, why not?
I think you 110% can. It'll be interesting to see what decides to come up with there on the defense side of the ball. Scotty, that's going to wrap up the Eagles portion of the show. We're going to get into this real quick, a couple minutes to end the show with the Sixers wish list here. But that felt good as well. This is a nice first show back from vacation.
Yeah,
Phillies
man.
Off on a positive note.
Nice when you can cover all the bases.
Absolutely. Let's wrap up with the Sixers wish list. Obviously, we've started it with firing Doc Rivers and bringing in Nick Nurse as his replacement. Check. We followed it up with where did we go next? Tobias Harris.
Trade Tobias.
Kind of seems like that's going to happen. You've had the reports of his dad/agent talking at a restaurant on speakerphone. Not sure I'm buying into that, but we'll see.
That would be really reckless management as an agent, I would say.
Father.
Yeah, it's father.
You think his dad's just on speakerphone in the middle of Philadelphia? We talked about we would welcome back James Harden on not a max and hopefully less than 4 years. That's the
2
next
to 3
step.
years would be perfect.
Before we get into free agency, meaning bringing in new faces, as we just talked about with the newcomers with the Eagles. Yeah. We're going to get into that on next week's show. But today, who do we want the Sixers to bring back from last year's team? And I really think there's 2 guys that fit the mold of what Nick Nurse likes to do that that fill the need and body types and athleticism that he wants, which would be Paul Reed and Jalen McDaniels, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
let
I
me
think,
ask you, do you
yeah,
think it's
go
a
ahead.
possibility both come back?
Yeah, I think so. I think given the Sixers situation where they are operating over the cap right now, so they have to take advantage of the players that they have the rights to
Yeah,
and the players that they have the ability to go over the cap and still be able to retain. So I think you look at Paul Reed, you look at Jalen McDaniels, like you said, those are definitely Nick Nurse guys, lengthy, defensive
right.
minded, able to create turnovers. So yeah, I think those guys you have to bring back. Jalen McDaniels, it's interesting, man, because it's almost like, Doc Rivers did us one more solid before he left, and that was simply not playing Jalen McDaniels down the stretch because he sunk his value. At the end of the day, Jalen
Yeah,
McDaniels came from Charlotte averaging what, 13, 14
yeah,
points a game, and he sunk all the way down to 6 to 7 points per game, didn't play much. And ultimately, I think that does bring his value down to the point where now maybe the Sixers can bring him back at a reasonable price. And I think this is a guy that has a ton of potential, honestly. I mean, between the shot creating ability, he can get his own
mhm.
shot in the mid range. He also shot 40% from three while he was in
Yeah.
Philadelphia last season.
Not a
So
lot of volume, but he's not going to be a high volume guy here anyway.
exactly. You're not going to see him shooting a ton of threes, but I think, for example, right? Mind you, we don't know what you're going to get back in a Tobias Harris trade when that happens, but throw him in Tobias Harris's role, right? Where maybe he takes 3 or 4 threes a game. He's the guy cutting towards the rim, right? He's the guy attacking the rim and trying to finish. He's going to be dunking the ball a lot more than what Tobias Harris was. He can catch alley oops. He can finish at the rim. So I think there's areas, one, where this guy is what, 23, 24 years old. He can still improve this offseason. He
Absolutely.
has a ton of potential with his size, being 6'7", 6'8" at that forward spot with very long arms. He's very lanky. And I think that gives the Sixers something that they just simply haven't had, because Matisse Thybulle, everybody talked about that trade in hindsight, and Matisse Thybulle would have played. He would not have played in the playoffs. I promise you, he would not have, because he cannot do anything on offense. He doesn't even have a mind for it. Jalen McDaniels is not like that. I think McDaniels struggled a little bit with finding his spots next to Harden, Maxey, and Embiid at times, but bringing him in, especially with like a second unit and him getting a full season in his role, I think you could see him be a big part of a
Yeah.
team. He presents all of the things that you need in the playoffs. He just wasn't comfortable here last year with the time that he had beforehand.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm excited for him. It's funny with Paul Reed. I had Phil and Scotty Talks NBA the other night, and he thinks that Paul Reed is going to get priced out of the Sixers range. There's a chance, but I don't know. Like Paul Reed, he thinks that Paul Reed's going to get starter money. And I don't think that he's going to get that, man. I don't think that there's enough there to get that. I think the prospect of playing with Nick Nurse rather than Doc Rivers for the Sixers, I think Paul Reed likes the group that he's playing with. I think he
Yeah, I
likes
agree. And
being
I
with the
think this
Sixers
could definitely be a
organization.
possibility with Nick Nurse as well.
I think the Doc Rivers thing is a kind of a deterrent, right, for these young players,
I
whereas you don't
listen,
have that anymore. Nick Nurse is in here, and maybe that entices Paul Reed to stay a little bit more.
listen, I know some teams run small ball, and maybe this is just my vision for the Sixers moving forward, but I think we've talked ourselves into Paul Reed being a center when he's more so a power
Power
forward in this
forward.
league. Yeah,
Yeah.
he can't really shoot the ball, so that's what limits him,
Yeah.
from playing that stretch forward type of position. But like when you have a center like Joel who can stretch the floor,
Yeah.
no reason you can't put your four in the dunker spot and as a cutter and different things like that
Yeah.
and using them pick and roll. So the price tag is interesting because I do agree with Phil in a sense where I do think that bag was greatly raised over this playoff run.
Yeah.
But what team is going to go after Paul Reed to be their starting center?
Right.
No one's paying him starter money to be their backup. We're not paying him
Yeah.
starter money to be our backup. No other
Yeah.
team's going to do that. So if he's getting starter money, who's doing it? Who's looking at
A
that
bottom tier team, right?
that offensive bag, that size, that guy, and saying starting center for my team?
A
I don't
bottom
think
tier
you're
team.
getting that. Yeah, maybe. Even if
Maybe. Like you look at, for example, Detroit Pistons, right? They brought in Jalen Duren last year in the draft. Like they're not starting Paul Reed. You can go over to OKC. They're not starting Paul Reed. So you can go down the list of these teams. Houston, you have Sengun. He's not starting Paul Reed. Like there's all these bottom teams, and look at the San Antonio. You're not starting Paul Reed. You have Victor Wembanyama.
I just don't
Like,
think he's a
yeah,
starting center in this league. I don't
and I
view
think
him
that
as that.
works into the Sixers' favor ultimately.
I agree.
Now, the interesting thing, just on the rest of the guys, Niang, I'm out on. I don't think
Yeah.
you need to bring him back. Now,
Dude, I wanted to
it's
bring
a
up Fred's
favorable
comment
contract.
here.
Wants to be
I
the
need
10th
more.
guy, sure, but yeah, I'm out
I need
on
more
him.
than this. I know if we're bringing Reed and McDaniels back, and you still have D-Melt, that's already 8 guys right there. Man, I
Yeah,
need to see difference. I need
I
to
think
see.
that isn't it's fine to start out here. I think, but it's not keeping in mind the Tobias Harris trade, because I think the Tobias
Right.
Harris trade, as I've been listening to people talk about the CBA and everything that's going on and everything that's changing in the NBA, and he's on this expiring contract, it's really sounding like the Sixers could get something. I don't want to say good, but something decent at least. I've
Right.
heard mocks, for example, Tobias and who was it? Was it D-Melt? Tobias and D-Melt to Atlanta for DeAndre Hunter and John Collins, for example. I don't know if that moves the needle. I don't know how we feel about that overall as a fit. It's just an example, though, right? Like that would be something that you could do. Bradley Beal, I know a Philly Eagles fan talked about it in the comments earlier. You're talking about Bradley Beal now, and it's crazy what 2 seasons have done to his value, because now you're talking about him. He was an all-star 3 seasons ago, super max eligible. You had Embiid clamoring to get him on the Sixers. You had other teams that wanted to get him to be that second guy. Now it's gotten to the point where he has that super max deal and his value has sunk so low that it's not out of the realms of possibility that you could get Bradley Beal in back on an expiring Tobias Harris contract trade. Like that is not out of the realms of possibilities. There's a lot of things that would have to fall your way, but the thing
And
that
by the way,
makes
whoever
that
says no to that.
slightly realistic is the fact that Bradley Beal has a no trade clause with the Wizards. He chooses where he wants to go. So if he says Philly is it for me, I want to play with Embiid, he would have to say that. Then yeah, I think that is more than realistic that you could get him back in a trade with Tobias Harris. Maybe you have to tag along a Jaden Springer or maybe even a D-Melt, but I'm doing that. I'm simply doing that. Ultimately, the risk that comes along with that, he's on a contract that is worse than Tobias Harris is from a money standpoint. Is it
Sure.
worse in the standpoint
But
of talent and what he
his
brings?
offensive output that you're probably going to get from Bradley Beal. And yes, I know
Going to
his
be much
numbers were
better.
down last year on a bad Wizards. Bradley Beal can still shoot and score the basketball
Yeah.
with a decent amount of the best of them in the around the
It's
NBA.
insane. Yeah, it's insane. Beggars can't be choosers, man.
I will say this, dude. So to me, I like just personally, for whatever reason, I have a weird feeling. I think James Harden's coming back. Like
Yeah.
that's just. I know some people think no way, he's gone. He's coming back to Houston. I know the reports of
Hard
he's
to know.
torn, and I have a feeling Morey wants him back. I have a feeling he's going to come back.
Yeah.
So to me, you have 4 starters, and if you move Tobias and the bench you laid out, Brett, which is what 5 guys plus another guy. So if you bring in a starter for Tobias, like to me, you're switching out Tobias for another starter essentially, and then your bench still looks like that. That's not good enough for me. That's why where like I look at, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I know I said I want McDaniels and Reed back, but I also want different. And I know different isn't always better.
Yeah.
But like I'm not looking at a James Harden, Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid, PJ Tucker, and X in place of Tobias Harris with Melton, McDaniels, Reed, and Springer, and as your back. I don't think that's a good enough bench. I think we're going to watch the same movie over again.
Yeah. Sign and trade for Kyle Kuzma, or Kyle Kuzma sign and trade for Tobias Harris would be another option from the Wizards, which that's an immediate starter, and I think that upgrades your starting unit. I think he would fit much better beside PJ Tucker, James Harden, for example. I think that James Harden could open up Kuzma's game even more. And he plays with energy. I think that's the biggest thing about Kuzma that's enticing. The Dallas Mavericks, they have some options there that they could send, like a Tim Hardaway Jr. That would be interesting to me. He's a scoring punch. But yeah, I agree with you. You do. It's not that we can just go into the season with.
Oh, they also brought back Daniel House. He's back. So
Daniel House will be on the bench, and Petrusev's interesting. I see there's a lot of talk about him, but I don't think that we can count him contributing this year, his first year transferring over to the NBA. I don't think that we're going to be able to count him into that bench in production. It would be a bonus if
Springer's definitely a sort of X factor coming off the bench this year. Obviously, we know the type of defensive player he is, but what can he bring offensively? So if he can take a step and be that G League type of player here in the NBA, then that obviously brings you difference as well that we didn't have last year. I just don't. Right now, I don't have a lot of confidence in Jaden Springer being a viable option.
I look at this bench, and the thing that sticks out to me and the thing that bothers me overall about it is that, and mind you, I don't think that that's going to be the final bench. It's just
no. But I don't either.
There's no lighted up scorer coming off that bench, and I need a microwave off the bench. We need somebody that can come in and. I don't want to say win you a game, but that's what some bench players can do. You can even go to the Sacramento Kings, man. A guy like Malik Monk coming off the bench won them games in the playoffs.
Bones Highland beat us when you and I were in
Bones Highland, right? Bruce Brown off of the Denver bench can win you games when he's at his top game, right? And so there's another guy, and I just thought of it. It came back into my head, but Buddy Hield is that instant. Yeah, it's funny, Brett. We're on the same page right there because Buddy Hield could start. He could start, and I think that would be beautiful and unlock so many parts of Tyrese Maxey, James Harden type of lineup. That would just be ridiculous to have a volume shooter like Buddy Hield next to those two and Embiid. But yeah, that's exactly. I got off track, but Buddy Hield was literally what I was going to. As that guy that shoots 10, 11 threes a game and can win you a game, right? You saw Max Strus in game 2 of the finals. He hits 4 threes in the first quarter. That type of stuff sets you up in good spots, and it makes a complete difference in the way series and games can go down the stretch. They need that type of player, though. Doesn't even have to be off bench. They need that type of player.
Look at the kid from Denver.
Yeah. Christian Brown, right? Came off the bench and he's making a difference defensively. He finishes around the rim. These are the things we need to see.
Let me be fair to guys, unknown guys like a Jaden Springer that I don't have a lot of
Maybe he is that.
That's not fair because a guy like a Christian, it's Brown, but it's spelled Braun or whatever.
It's spelled Braun, but it's Brown. Yeah.
If that's who the Sixers picked up, we would be like, what the fuck?
Yeah. He wouldn't play.
Guys that we don't know about can contribute. Maybe Springer can play. I just don't have the confidence in it right now.
That's fair. I think it's fair.
All right, man. I think that's going to wrap up this Friday edition of the Phaithful Phanatics Show. Guys, we will be back Monday, Wednesday, Friday, all of next week, breaking down more Phillies, Eagles, and Sixers.
Special guest Monday.
Oh, yeah, special guest Monday. Does he write? No. Does he write for the Toronto Raptors? Or just,
let me just get his page pulled up here for you. I'll read the bio because I won't lie.
Anywho, he's a Toronto Raptors guy who is going to give us the Toronto point of view from Nick Nurse.
Esfandiar Barahini. He's a writer, NBA reporter. He's a sideline reporter actually for the CB League. He's actually used to work for the Score, the Raptors Republic. So. Nonetheless, he comes from Canada. He's a Toronto guy. He's going to give us some major insight into the Toronto Raptors and their time with Nick Nurse, and hopefully give us some good stuff from the base of his tweets about Nick Nurse and the hire by the Sixers. seems like he was a very much a Nick Nurse
Positive, yeah.
guy. So it'll be interesting to see what
Yeah,
he
we'll get
says.
that
There's
point of
obviously
view.
a little rumblings coming out of Toronto at the end of Nick Nurse's stint. So I'm hoping to hear a little bit more about that as well. But
Yeah.
should
I'll
be
be
something to look
interested to get
forward
his
to for
thoughts.
Monday.
I'm definitely going to throw him a James Harden question just to get like an outsider's point of view on
Absolutely.
what you would do
Absolutely.
with a guy like James Harden.
Like, does he fit Nick Nurse?
Right,
Right?
exactly.
That's a great question.
Who on this
Already
roster
thinking.
does, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, we'll be back all next week breaking down all major Philly sports. We might have to talk some Flyers, man. Big trade.
Got to, yeah. They're making the right moves in my opinion. They're doing the right thing, man.
Yeah,
I don't know about Carter Hart.
I was so checked
but
out of Flyers land this season.
Do you want to move Carter Hart? Are you open to trading him? I don't know if that is something I would do.
That's crazy.
He's still young.
Like the haul you could probably get for Carter Hart
be crazy.
Has to bring intrigue to the front office and Danny Briere and Jonesy.
Yeah.
But to me, he's still way too young and that great of a goaltender that he could still be a pillar in the future.
Yeah.
For this team.
You can turn it around quick in the
a little older in age, a little bit more injury riddled.
Yeah.
Was great for the Flyers. But you got they got a lot back in that deal. A lot of assets, a lot of future draft picks. They're going to get interest from Konechny. They're going to get Kevin Hayes might be on his way out. Dude, they're cleaning house. And it's going to make for some bad hockey the next probably 2+ seasons.
You can turn it around quick in the NHL faster than probably any sport. That's the one upside part of it. But I think they're making the right move ultimately. They were going nowhere fast. I agree, for a while.
Man. You had to retool and reload this organization with assets and with younger talent. And better talent. I mean, Jonesy was on the Anthony Gargano show on 97.5 last weekend, basically saying, man, like Claude Giroux is a Flyers legend, and Claude Giroux was great, but they're looking for better than Claude Giroux.
Yeah,
they're looking for more offensively, point skilled, 100-point seasons type of guys, and Claude did that one time in his tenure with the Flyers. So they're looking for even better than that, and he's one of the greatest Flyers to ever live.
Right.
In a lot of people's minds. So.
Hey, here's hoping.
Yes, sir, man. But guys, we'll be back on Monday. And also don't forget to check out our friends over at Manscaped. Let them know that your friends over at DSM sent you by using our promo code DSM at checkout for 20% off your total order and free shipping. Again, that is promo code DSM at checkout for 20% off your entire order and free shipping at manscaped.com. Your balls will certainly thank you. For myself, for Scotty, have a great rest of your weekend. Subscribe to the DSM YouTube channel.
Yes, sir.
Have a great rest of your weekend.
Go Fightins.